1 week before our wedding, I found out that my fiancée only wants money. She was planning a starter marriage. Her words, not mine. I let her keep planning. Let her smile through every fitting. Then I messaged every vendor. She'll be covering the balance herself. She found out the morning of, when the invoices hit her inbox. The thunderstorm that night should have been my first warning. Rain lashed against my downtown apartment windows while I worked late on quarterly reports, completely oblivious that my entire existence was about to shatter into fragments. Eva had texted earlier about running late due to final wedding preparations, our ceremony now just 7 days away. 3 years of what I believed was genuine love were revealed as an elaborate charade in the span of 2 devastating hours. Eva's laptop sat open on our kitchen counter, its screen glowing with an incoming email notification. The subject line stopped my heart cold. Starter marriage timeline. Phase 2 initiation complete. My hands trembled as I opened the message thread between Eva and someone named Claire, revealing conversations that made my blood turn to ice water. The emails detailed something called a matrimonial asset acquisition strategy, with clinical precision that would have impressed corporate executives. Eva had categorized me as Target 7, documenting my financial worth down to pension contributions and property appreciation values. Phase 1 involved identifying wealthy men with minimal family oversight and stable income streams. Phase 2 required rapid marriage followed by strategic positioning for maximum asset extraction. Phase 3 would commence after 18 months, involving manufactured evidence of abuse leading to divorce proceedings designed to claim substantial settlements. But the financial calculations were nothing compared to her psychological assessment of my character. Eva had written extensive notes about my predictable behavior patterns, my tendency to handle financial decisions independently, and most chillingly, my isolation from extended family members who might interfere with her plans. She had identified me as an ideal target because of my trusting nature and preference for privacy in personal matters. The shower was still running when I discovered additional files buried in her desktop folders. Bank statements revealed systematic theft from our joint wedding accounts, with funds transferred to offshore entities I had never heard of. Receipt scans showed she had been selling engagement gifts from my colleagues and relatives, including my grandmother's pearl necklace that had been in our family for 4 generations. The antique piece was worth more than most people's annual salaries, and Eva had sold it for a fraction of its value to maintain operational cash flow. The most horrifying discovery was a folder labeled insurance documentation containing hours of secretly recorded conversations between us. Eva had been wearing recording devices for months, capturing intimate discussions and editing them to create false evidence of psychological abuse. She had manipulated audio clips of me discussing work stress to sound like threats of violence. Conversations about household budgets were twisted to appear like financial control and domination. Even private moments of physical intimacy had been recorded and distorted to suggest coercion and manipulation. The edited recordings were accompanied by detailed scripts for coached witnesses, people Eva had befriended specifically to provide false testimony about my supposed controlling behavior. She had created an entire fictional narrative of our relationship, complete with fake diary entries documenting fabricated incidents of emotional trauma and psychological manipulation. The sophistication of her deception was breathtaking in its thoroughness and terrifying in its implications. When Eva emerged from the bathroom wearing her silk robe, I was sitting calmly at our dining table with her laptop closed, takeout containers arranged as if nothing had changed. She kissed my forehead and discussed flower arrangement modifications while I nodded appropriately, my mind racing through the implications of everything I had uncovered. Her casual demeanor while planning my financial destruction was perhaps the most chilling aspect of the entire revelation. She mentioned meeting with the wedding planner the following morning to finalize seating arrangements for guests, completely unaware that I now understood the true purpose of our upcoming ceremony. Every smile, every affectionate gesture, every discussion about our future together was now revealed as calculated manipulation designed to position me for systematic exploitation and eventual destruction. That night, I lay awake listening to Eva's peaceful breathing while contemplating the scope of her betrayal. The woman I had planned to spend my life with was essentially a professional predator who had studied my vulnerabilities and exploited them with remarkable skill. The realization that everything about our relationship was fabricated left me feeling hollow and disconnected from reality itself. Dawn brought clarity and determination. I called my office claiming a family emergency while Eva attended her fabricated wedding planning meeting, giving me uninterrupted access to investigate the full scope of her criminal activities. My background in corporate forensic accounting proved invaluable as I began tracing digital breadcrumbs that led to discoveries far more disturbing than her initial emails had suggested. Eva's browser history revealed participation in encrypted forums dedicated to what members called matrimonial asset liberation. The sites operated like professional networks, with detailed guides for target identification, relationship manipulation techniques, and legal strategies for maximizing settlement amounts. Eva was not a novice experimenter, but a veteran operative with extensive experience and an impressive success record that made my blood run cold. Her forum profile listed 5 previous operations spanning 8 years across multiple states. The first husband had been a software development manager in Seattle whose house and retirement savings were seized after Eva manufactured domestic violence evidence using techniques nearly identical to what she was preparing for me. The second victim was a radiologist in Phoenix whose medical practice was destroyed through coordinated false malpractice claims involving paid accomplices posing as patients seeking financial settlements. The third husband presented the most disturbing case study. Eva had targeted a recently widowed restaurant owner in Chicago, exploiting his grief over his deceased wife to accelerate their relationship timeline. She had systematically sabotaged his business relationships by spreading rumors about health code violations and financial irregularities, driving away customers and suppliers until bankruptcy became inevitable. The psychological manipulation had been so complete that he had attempted suicide twice before Eva divorced him and claimed the remaining assets. Banking records accessed through her carelessly saved passwords revealed assets totaling nearly $3 million accumulated through these operations. Eva maintained accounts in 7 countries, owned rental properties in 4 states under different legal identities, and had established relationships with corrupt legal professionals who specialized in manipulating family court proceedings for substantial fees. But the most shocking discovery involved her fourth husband, a construction company owner in Denver. Forum discussions suggested Eva had not simply divorced this victim, but had arranged what appeared to be an accidental death. Insurance claim documents showed she had convinced him to increase his life insurance policy substantially, then arranged for him to suffer what investigators ruled as an overdose during a period when Eva had verifiable alibis provided by accomplices. The forum conversations revealed Eva training newer network members in psychological manipulation techniques, teaching them to identify vulnerable targets and exploit specific emotional triggers for maximum effectiveness. She had developed detailed personas for different victim types, complete with manufactured backgrounds, rehearsed emotional stories, and staged family emergencies designed to accelerate relationship development and financial commitment. Her approach to me had been the most sophisticated operation yet. She had spent 4 months researching my background before engineering our first meeting at a coffee shop near my office building. She had cultivated mutual friends to create introduction opportunities, studied my social media profiles to understand my interests and preferences, and even fabricated shared experiences by researching my college years and previous relationships through public records and social media archaeology. The level of premeditation was staggering. Eva had rented an apartment in my neighborhood months before we met, joined my gym and favorite restaurants to increase chance encounters, and even adopted personality traits and political opinions specifically designed to appeal to my documented preferences. She had essentially created an entirely fictional version of herself calibrated to exploit my psychological vulnerabilities with surgical precision. However, Eva had made one critical miscalculation. My forensic accounting background included specialized training in financial crime investigation, and my professional network included contacts throughout federal law enforcement agencies. Colleagues had always described me as methodical and thorough, qualities that Eva had mistaken for predictability and gullibility, not recognizing them as the analytical skills that would ultimately expose her criminal enterprise. With 5 days remaining before our scheduled ceremony, I initiated a sophisticated counter-operation designed to expose Eva's entire criminal network while protecting future victims from similar predation. My contacts in federal law enforcement were initially skeptical until I presented the comprehensive evidence I had compiled, after which they moved with remarkable speed to establish surveillance operations and coordinate multi-jurisdictional investigations. Specialized recording equipment was installed throughout our apartment and Eva's vehicle, capturing every conversation and phone call with legally admissible quality. Federal agents posing as maintenance workers, delivery personnel, and neighboring residents established comprehensive surveillance of Eva's activities and associates. The operation expanded rapidly as investigators realized the scope of the criminal network and the number of potential victims who required protection. I began feeding Eva carefully crafted misinformation about dramatic improvements in my financial situation, claiming that recent cryptocurrency investments had generated substantial returns and that a previously disputed inheritance had been resolved in my favor. Eva's excitement was barely concealed as she absorbed information about phantom offshore accounts, fictional business partnerships, and imaginary real estate holdings that would significantly increase the potential value of our marriage as a criminal target. The trap expanded when I suggested that Eva invite her forum associates to attend our wedding as honored guests. I explained that recent family disputes had left us with empty reception seats, and Eva eagerly agreed to fill them with her network contacts, seeing an opportunity to introduce accomplished operatives to wealthy wedding attendees who could become future targets. She had no idea that federal agents would be embedded among the catering staff, photographers, musicians, and venue security personnel, documenting every conversation and interaction. Meanwhile, I discreetly contacted Eva's previous victims who were still alive, offering to help them achieve justice after years of suffering in silence. 2 had committed suicide after losing everything to Eva's schemes, but the survivors were desperate for an opportunity to hold her accountable for the destruction she had caused in their lives. Their cooperation provided crucial evidence of Eva's criminal patterns, including financial records, communications, and witness testimony that established clear intent and premeditation. The investigation revealed that Eva's network operated like a sophisticated criminal organization with specialized roles and territories. Some members focused on target identification and initial contact. Others handled relationship development and emotional manipulation, while specialist operatives managed legal proceedings, evidence fabrication, and asset transfer operations. The group had generated tens of millions of dollars over several years while destroying hundreds of lives across multiple states. 3 days before our wedding, surveillance equipment captured Eva discussing an accelerated timeline for my elimination. She had become so excited about the enhanced financial opportunity that she decided to skip the divorce phase entirely and proceed directly to what she termed permanent asset acquisition. A professional killer had been hired to arrange my death during our planned honeymoon hiking trip in remote mountain wilderness, where my disappearance could be attributed to an outdoor accident. The murder plan was sophisticated and carefully orchestrated. Eva had researched wilderness areas with histories of hiking accidents, studied weather patterns to identify optimal timing, and arranged alibi evidence showing she would be visiting her fictional sick aunt during the time frame when I would disappear. The hired assassin specialized in staged accidents and had successfully eliminated targets for Eva's network on previous occasions. But Eva's excitement had made her careless with operational security protocols. Federal surveillance captured detailed discussions about the murder timeline, payment arrangements, and cleanup procedures. The assassin was identified through voice recognition technology and arrested during a planned meeting with Eva to finalize execution details. His cooperation provided additional evidence about network operations and implicated Eva in several previous murders that had been classified as accidents or suicides. Wedding vendors had received deposits from accounts that I controlled, and I had been quietly coordinating with each service provider about modified payment arrangements without Eva's knowledge. She assumed all financial obligations were handled according to our original agreements, completely unaware that her assumptions were about to become very expensive mistakes that would expose her hidden assets to federal investigation. Wedding morning dawned with crystalline skies and perfect temperature, creating an ironically beautiful backdrop for Eva's imminent downfall. She was radiant with anticipated success, completely oblivious to the federal agents already positioned throughout the venue grounds, their surveillance equipment recording everything while they waited for predetermined signals to initiate arrest procedures. The hired assassin had been in federal custody for 36 hours, and his detailed cooperation had provided investigators with comprehensive evidence about the network's criminal activities across multiple jurisdictions. At exactly 10 o'clock, wedding vendors began contacting Eva with urgent messages about payment discrepancies and outstanding balances. The florist demanded immediate settlement for elaborate arrangements that had required special ordering and overtime preparation. The catering company insisted on resolving a $15,000 balance before food service could commence. The photographer refused to begin work until contractual obligations were satisfied. The venue coordinator threatened to cancel the reception unless outstanding charges were addressed immediately. Eva's initial confusion transformed into mounting panic as she realized that every vendor expected her to personally cover costs she had assumed were my financial responsibility. The combined amounts totaled nearly $70,000, requiring her to access hidden offshore accounts and potentially expose her carefully concealed financial network to scrutiny and investigation. Her meticulously maintained public persona began deteriorating under the pressure of multiple simultaneous demands for immediate payment. While Eva frantically contacted banking associates about emergency fund transfers that would maintain her operational security, federal agents were executing coordinated raids on addresses associated with her criminal network across 6 states. 4 members were arrested at safe houses, personal residences, and temporary locations, while their encrypted communications were being decoded and distributed to law enforcement agencies nationwide. The entire matrimonial fraud organization was being systematically dismantled through carefully planned simultaneous operations. Wedding guests arrived expecting a celebration, but found themselves witnessing a complex federal law enforcement operation disguised as a social event. Agents embedded among attendees were identifying network associates who had planned to scout for new targets among wealthy guests, leading to additional arrests and evidence collection that expanded the investigation's scope exponentially. The elegant venue transformed into a sophisticated evidence-gathering operation with minimal disruption to legitimate guests. At 11:45, just as Eva finally managed to arrange emergency payments that would temporarily satisfy vendor demands, she received a phone call that completely destroyed her remaining composure. Her primary legal contact informed her that federal agents had simultaneously seized all accounts associated with her shell companies, frozen assets in multiple countries, and issued warrants for her arrest on charges including conspiracy to commit murder, organized financial fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and racketeering under organized crime statutes. Eva's phone continued buzzing with increasingly desperate messages from network members whose operations had been compromised through coordinated law enforcement actions. Safe houses had been raided, communication channels had been monitored for weeks, encrypted servers had been seized, and victims from previous operations were providing detailed testimony to federal prosecutors about the systematic fraud they had experienced. The sophisticated criminal organization that had operated successfully for nearly a decade was completely exposed and methodically destroyed. When Eva finally comprehended the scope of the disaster surrounding her, she attempted to flee the venue through service exits, but federal agents were positioned at every possible escape route. As she was led away in handcuffs while wedding guests watched in stunned silence, I explained to close friends and family members that they had just witnessed the conclusion of a months-long federal investigation into organized matrimonial fraud that had victimized hundreds of people across the country. The arrests continued throughout the afternoon as additional network members were identified and apprehended. Eva's forum associates, legal accomplices, and even the corrupt officials who had helped manipulate court proceedings were taken into custody. The evidence collected during the operation filled multiple warehouses and provided prosecutors with comprehensive documentation of criminal activities spanning more than a decade. Eva was ultimately convicted on 23 federal charges and sentenced to 35 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Her network associates received sentences ranging from 8 to 20 years, and the organization's seized assets totaling over $40 million were distributed to previous victims as restitution payments. The hired assassin provided testimony that implicated Eva in 4 additional murders that had been previously classified as accidents or suicides, leading to supplementary charges that will ensure her incarceration for the remainder of her natural life. The investigation's revelations prompted congressional hearings about matrimonial fraud networks and led to comprehensive federal legislation requiring enhanced background verification for marriage license applications, mandatory waiting periods for significant financial transactions between newly married couples, and establishment of specialized task forces dedicated to identifying and prosecuting similar criminal organizations operating throughout the country. I entered federal witness protection programs and relocated to a different region with a completely new identity, as intercepted communications revealed that several network members had discussed revenge operations against individuals responsible for exposing their criminal enterprise. My testimony helped convict additional criminals and provided crucial evidence that protected dozens of potential future victims from financial and physical harm. The case received extensive national media coverage, inspiring documentary productions, academic studies about organized matrimonial crime, and legislative reforms that strengthen protections for vulnerable individuals targeted by sophisticated fraud operations. Dating platforms implemented enhanced identity verification systems. Financial institutions developed new protocols for detecting suspicious account activities associated with relationship-based fraud, and law enforcement agencies established permanent task forces dedicated to combating matrimonial crime networks. Several of Eva's previous victims contacted me through federal authorities to express profound gratitude for finally achieving justice after years of suffering in silence and isolation. 2 had attempted suicide multiple times after losing everything to Eva's schemes, One had been homeless for 4 years after her operations destroyed his construction business, and another had been unable to maintain relationships due to psychological trauma from her manipulation. The substantial restitution payments allowed them to rebuild their lives, seek appropriate medical treatment, and regain some measure of financial stability and emotional peace. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.